This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it in me.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it, Free for All Friday here on the Steve Gruber Show. The Common Sense hotline is open at 888-900-9966. The nation's attention drawn to Roseburg, Oregon yesterday. And sadly, an all too familiar scene where a maniac armed with a gun goes onto a school campus, in this case, Umpqua Community College, and opens fire. When it was all done, 9 students were dead. The shooter was also dead. 10 deaths total, 7 injured. Police and FBI and federal officials sorting it all out now. Our next guest is David Jakes. He is from the Roseburg Beacon newspaper, the publisher there, who has been following this very obviously from the beginning. A very busy day yesterday and a long night. David Jakes, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so tell me what you know at this point. We have a 27-year-old shooter here, Chris Harper Mercer. What is the latest on the investigation?
Well, that information was breaking very late last evening. We waited all day to find out who the shooter was. We heard original reports that it was a 20-year-old male. Turns out the latest that we have is that he was a 26-year-old male, formerly from Torrance, California, settled into the Roseburg area, lived probably not more than about a mile and a half from the campus. His apartment was under investigation last night. That all cordoned off late in the evening. We really don't, even this point, I haven't even had it confirmed that he was a student.
So why do you think these folks, I mean, this seems very unusual to me, and this I've done this for a long time. Usually when the shooter is deceased, a decedent there, and they have some information, law enforcement is usually quick to share that information. They have been very tight-lipped. Why is that, do you think?
Well, we all wondered the same thing, Steve, but I suspect part of that was related to some of these online postings that were out the day before, and they were trying to probably see if they could bring anyone else that might have been involved with this into the net, and that's the only thing I can think of. But, yeah, it was terribly frustrating. More frustrating even are some of the victims' families who were not notified. One of those is a firefighter that we talked to just outside the campus, and I would say between 5 and 6 hours had no contact whatsoever with his son, who he knew to be a student in class at the time, and it turns out his son was one of the students killed. And we were trying to get through and get some information, and that was very difficult, and we were unsuccessful, but ultimately he was notified. But it was just horrific. The information was very slow to get out, and I don't know that isn't partially due to the multi-jurisdictional investigation that's going on. Our sheriff's department has done an outstanding job. But now we have Homeland Security, ATF, and all these federal FBIs here, federal entities, and I'm not so sure that didn't contribute to the lack of information.
Sure. Now, for our listeners, we're on the line here with David Jakes, the Roseburg Beacon, Oregon newspaper publisher on the shooting of Umpqua Community College. It's the middle of the night there for you. What is it, 4 in the morning?
Yeah,
But give me an idea. I mean, I've been to your part of the state. It is a fabulous part of the state, the Umpqua River, world famous for steelhead and salmon and so forth, for fishing. I mean, it's a picturesque community that people actually come to retire to, if I'm not mistaken, and then this happens. Very out of character, I would say.
Well, it's way out of character, and you're absolutely right. People come here to retire. People come here, as I did 28 years ago, to raise their families, because it is just one of those bedrock communities, kind of a Mayberry-type community, and people know each other here. They look out for each other, and, every community is going to say, we're just shocked nothing like this could happen here, and of course, that should be the case in any community. But it is stunning. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And the other thing is, too, this is a very conservative, pro-Second Amendment. There are a lot of people in this county that have concealed carry permits, that are law-abiding citizens. There's a lot of hunting activity here. People respect the Second Amendment here and hold it very dear.
But on that campus, Nobody was carrying weapons because it's a gun-free zone. If I'm not mistaken, I've heard the new college president come out and say this will be a gun-free zone for sure. It was so gun-free, in fact, David, that even the security guards had nothing more than radios. How in the world would you defend a campus, a college campus with 2,000 or 3,000 students on it? What is he going to do, throw the radio if somebody comes along? Because obviously they had to wait a long time for law enforcement to arrive on scene.
Well, Steve, I'm going to take a little different direction on this, if you don't mind, and I would tell you this. We talked to one student who is a veteran that's going to attend classes up there, who is a concealed carry permit holder. He was carrying that day, and I will tell you also, it was false information put out by the Oregon Attorney General's office that UCC was a gun-free zone. Now, you could argue today, October 2nd it is, but here's the thing. If there had been a gun-free zone, if there had been 100 signs from the entrance of the campus to every building, it wouldn't have changed the outcome yesterday. These kinds of lunatics are not interested in following the laws, and so your only other choice is to disarm every American. And I'm really sorry to say this, but our president has been so callous and disrespectful, I think, of the families here when he jumped right into the middle of the political agenda, which he's had for some time, and it's just appalling. The focus needs to be right now on healing this community, especially the families that were devastated by this tragedy.
Well, David, I tip my hat to you for having the courage to say the truth. David Jakes, the Roseburg Beacon newspaper publisher in Roseburg, Oregon, where the Umpqua Community College shooting occurred. I tip my hat for you to have the courage to call politics for politics, because you're exactly right. There is no law short of outright confiscation of all Americans' firearms that would have prevented what happened yesterday. The only way you would prevent that is to have outright confiscation of all privately owned firearms in America, and anything short of that, you can call it common sense, you can call it whatever you want, that these people like Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama want to confiscate guns. That's really what it comes down to, and I don't think that does a service to the families in Roseburg, Oregon, not today.
No, it certainly doesn't, and I got to tell you something. There's not going to be any reception. That's not a message that's going to receive a warm reception here in Douglas County. In fact, our sheriff has gone on record, John Hanlon. He's an outstanding and very popular sheriff running for his third term now. But he has said flat out, and he just sent a letter, I believe, the day before this event to Vice President Biden saying, if you send any federal mandates down to our state or our county that are extra constitutional or unconstitutional, if you will, they aren't going to be enforced in Douglas County. And that's the kind of sheriff, where law enforcement is the most effective at the local level and with the sheriff, elected sheriff. And so we're very proud of our sheriff here, and he's basically made it clear. You put extra constitutional or unconstitutional mandates on us, they're not going to be enforced.
Yeah, but your governor might look at the same sort of an approach. I mean, you may be a very conservative part of Oregon, but Oregon, by and large, is a very left-of-center place, as you know. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word, David.
Well, we just, our hearts and prayers are with the families, obviously. We want to get this we want to get these families the attention and the love and care that they need and to move forward. But changing our gun laws is not the answer. Well,
David, I appreciate you've got a lot ahead of you in that community and a lot of healing to do, regardless of what happens with the law. David Jakes, I greatly appreciate it. I know it's been a long night for you. It's been a long night for your community, and a lot of long days lie ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us on.
David Jakes, everybody, the Roseburg Beacon newspaper publisher there in Roseburg, Oregon, where that deadly college shooting took place yesterday, Umpqua Community College. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
It's 18 after on this Friday. Shifting gears now and looking at the political landscape for 2016, changing a bit here in Michigan for sure. Congressman Dan Benishek says he will not seek re-election. At first he said he would, then he said he wouldn't, and that opens up the possibilities of other folks running for that seat. One of the folks that I think might consider, and we're just going to have to ask him, is State Senator Tom Casperson, who represents Michigan's 38th State Senate District. Senator, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So maybe we should trade in the term senator for the term congressman. What do you think? Yeah, you like that, don't you? Come on, you like that.
Well, if it could be done that quickly, that would be an easier process for sure, but I think there's quite a bit to go through yet.
Okay, so tell me your thought process at this point. Tell me where you are in this in this process of, first of all, it was a bit of a surprise. I thought Benishek surprised me anyhow a little bit. Maybe you saw it coming. But first of all, how did you see that announcement? And then tell me where you are in the process.
Yeah, it was a surprise. I had talked to Congressman Benishek earlier in the spring of the year and kind of, questioned him on his intentions just because of the lay of land and where I was. And he said that he wanted to run again, and we supported that decision and said we would be behind him, to be reelected. And so that our plans really were to focus on the Senate seat and, get to the end of my term and assume that maybe at the end of that term, that's when Dan might make his decision to retire. And we would fully gear up to make that run. And so that was what was in everybody's mind. And with term limits in Michigan, that's kind of the way it works is if you still have that passion and that fire in your belly to take some action to try and change policy, that's naturally where I thought I would probably try to go. But when Dan called me that morning and explained to me what he was doing, that changed our world dramatically.
Well, sure, that changed your timetable, that's for sure. So, okay, so where are you in this process then? Where are you as far as, and what is the process? For those of us that are never going to run for office, but, maybe fantasize about being king for a day like I do, well, basically every day. Just give me an idea. What is involved with the process? Paperwork, background checks, what happens?
Well, you have to set up a team, and there's certain things that you must do. In the federal laws, we're trying to figure all that out ourselves as we look into it because it's my understanding if you come out publicly and announce I am a candidate for the 1st District congressional seat, certain things take effect at that point. You have to have things in place, and you only have so many days to do it. So we're trying to work through all of that to make sure whatever we're doing here, we do it correctly and appropriate. So
let's
doing that.
Let's explore that a little bit. We're on the line with Tom Casperson, who is a state senator here in Michigan for the 38th Senate District. Tom, work with me here. Just repeat after me. I am a candidate for the 1st District. Go ahead. Just repeat it because just go ahead and announce here. We won't tell anybody.
Right.
It'll be between you and I promise you, Senator. Just you and I.
I'm sure we'll. As long as we keep it between you and I guess we're in good shape.
Just a conversation between friends. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm pretty sure it's no secret that we're certainly going to engage and move forward with the process and get things in place, and then there'll be a formal announcement coming. But I can't do that until I get those things in place. So that's what we're doing. You asked what we're up to.
Right, and no secret. Yeah, clearly you're going to make that announcement. What's your timetable? Because you're going to announce. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, I'm hoping within the month here we'll have things in place. We're really getting close to some of those things already being tied up, loose ends. The other thing too is there should be no assumption that you should run or you're the guy to run. So you have to make calls and see if people are backing you and supporting you. And so I've been also doing that to see if I have the support, because something like this. And even where I sit today has never been in my eyes at least, a one-man band here. It takes a team and it takes support. And
it does. Now,
you need that.
Having said that, when you get in the race for 1st Congressional District here in Michigan, what are your priorities? What are your priorities going into assuming you win the seat and become a congressman in the United States Congress? What are your priorities?
Well, I think they would fall in line exactly with what I made a priority of in the Senate and in the Michigan legislature, and that is overreach of government and regulatory. The regulatory side of things has, I think, crippled our ability to have an economy. And so I've been very passionate about those things. I think my record is very clear of what we've done. And quite frankly, what I'm finding is a lot of the gains we've made in Michigan with good leadership under Governor Snyder and the directors he's put in place have made some of those changes to help Michigan move forward, only to find the federal government weighing in and trumping what we're trying to do on the state level. So,
happens all the time, yeah. One of my concerns that I talk about here a lot on the program, and I think you can appreciate this, and we're on the line with State Senator Tom Casperson considering a run for the 1st Congressional District, is energy security. We're closing all these coal plants next year, 1.5 gigawatts taken away. Rolling blackouts could become the norm here in Michigan, and that's coming from a lot of sources, not me. Energy security, not only for Michigan, but for this nation, seems to be something that is becoming more and more of a critical issue. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. gets right in line with what I just said. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I guess what else would be on your agenda? National foreign policy, or would you focus to begin with on domestic policy? And we've got about a minute left.
Yeah, I think I'd have to start out with the domestic policy just based on the world we live in today. But as you're watching the news unfold, foreign policy certainly is in the forefront of what's happening, and it's watching how it's unfolding. It really begs the question of, are we really putting the United States first, or are we dabbling out there in all these meetings that they just had at the UN and the speakers that they've had? You listen to some of those folks and what they're suggesting, it doesn't seem to line up with reality, and I think there needs to be a dose of reality put into this. Certainly, where it comes to the United States and how we fit into this role.
Well, reality and fantasy land. Sometimes to me, there's not a lot of separation between Washington and Hollywood on some days. Tom, I greatly appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck. Of course, when you make that decision, you have our phone number. We'll have you right back on the program.
That sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. State Senator Tom Casperson, considering a run for the 1st Congressional District here in Michigan. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
All right, welcome back to it. It's 33 after the hour. This portion of the program brought to you by Consumers Mutual Insurance. Consumers Mutual, a bit different. They're a co-op, therefore you have a stake in what's going on. It's the insurance company I selected to cut through the confusion and figure out what's going on. I decided to be part of it at Consumers Mutual Insurance. You can find out more at consumersmutual.org. And I think you'll be happy you did. Here's the General Electric, the meatball. I used to work for the meatball. My checks used to come from 30 Rock when I worked for NBC News. Forgive me for my work at NBC. I was there for a long time, but just forgive me. I'm trying to do better now. I'm a refugee now from that news world. Diane Katz, our next guest, is a senior research fellow in regulatory policy and GE cynical ruse, she writes in a recent post. Pretending jobs are moving because of an end to the EXIM subsidies, which is the Export-Import Bank subsidies, corporate welfare. Diane Katz, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
If GE were like the insurance companies, the taxpayers could just prop it up. So when I lost my backside because GE stock went in the toilet, which it did to me a couple of times, they could have propped it up at taxpayers' expense. Isn't that the American way now?
Well, I sure hope not. But GE isn't hurting now, that's for sure.
Right.
And for them to claim that, they have to move jobs out of the U.S. because they're not getting export subsidies is just outrageous. It's just not even true.
Let's go through this. I've been through this before, but real slowly and in a thumbnail sketch, if you will. The Export-Import Bank, for those listening, so they can just have a rudimentary understanding of what it is and how it works.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, actually. What happens is that this government bank gives low-cost loans and financing to companies overseas. And then the companies overseas use that money to purchase goods from American companies.
Now, isn't it supposed to be, at least in its original design, designed to buy from American companies? But in effect, in recent years, we have found that the Export-Import Bank is where the taxpayers of America are giving money to foreign companies, then end up buying foreign goods, and actually does us not a hill of beans bit of good.
Well, originally it was intended to help increase the amount of goods that the U.S. could sell overseas during and after the Depression. And it gave money to countries overseas that had nothing because of the global economic climate. But it's turned into, a corporate welfare program because the biggest beneficiaries are some of the richest and, most successful multinational corporations in the world. And so, as it is, it only affects 2% of U.S. exports. And so it's a pretty small program in the scheme of things, but it represents, the what's on the backs of taxpayers. All of this subsidization that taxpayers are doing to corporate America. And, if we can start whittling away at that, we'll be a lot better off.
Yeah, at some point we have to find ways to. I mean, there's got to be ways. But here's the thing: this has been in front of Congress. Didn't they just reauthorize it again? Even though we know it's rife with abuse, we know that it's taking advantage of the taxpayers. We know that it's outlived its usefulness, and I could go on and on and on. But yet here it is, year after year, and years down the road, it'll probably still be here.
Well, the good news was that after 80 years of pretty easy reauthorizations, Congress did the right thing, believe it or not, and did not reauthorize it. And technically, the bank charter expired on June, 30th, and they couldn't make any new loans or new financing. Now, GE and Boeing and, the companies that benefited the most aren't giving up, and they're doing everything they can, spending millions and millions of dollars lobbying to get it back. And so that's what this ploy is of GE's, claiming that, well, if we're not going to get subsidies here in America, we're going to move our operations overseas. But if you look below the surface, if you could look beyond the press releases and the rhetoric, you find that, these companies have operations overseas already. They already get subsidies from other countries, and these moves are just part of normal, multinational types of business moves.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying to scare Americans. They're trying to scare members of Congress into giving them their subsidies back.
Well, right, but that's a time-tested and very effective way to move policy. Scare the daylights out of Americans, even though there's little truth to it. Like soon we're going to be underwater if we don't, give it to all this green energy things.
Right,
if we don't
exactly.
I can go down the list. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, all these horrible things are going to happen. And
part of the problem is that Congress, you can only know about so much, right? And government is so big at this point. There are so many programs that members may not know what these things are really about. And so their actions are not. They may be well intended, but they're misguided. So they really need to understand what's going on here, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So but here's the thing: it's one of those things where the voters' eyes just glaze over.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and that's understandable because when government is so big and you can't keep track of.
Well, exactly. That's my point.
We have $1 trillion budget. That's a lot of stuff going on.
$1 trillion budget. I thought it was $3 trillion comes in, $1 trillion budget, $18 trillion in debt, and people are like, whatever. What time's the football game on? I mean, seriously. Where's my smartphone? What are we doing tonight? Are we going out for dinner? I mean, people have overwhelmed.
When government is so powerful, people, I think, I'm not speaking for everyone, of course, but some people may feel that they can't affect change or that what they believe or how they vote will make any difference. They feel so, that things are so overpowering.
Well, they're overwhelmed.
That's unfortunate. I mean, that's not what America's supposed to be.
Well, and yeah, exactly. We're on the line with Diane Katz, Senior Research Fellow in Regulatory Policy. And let me tell you something. There's a lot of truth to that, Diane. I sit here and I talk about this with the listeners. Any given day, today being a little bit different, but most days here, there are half a dozen different stories here that would all be lead stories, whether it's Hillary's emails or what's going on with Syria and Russia or the shooter in Oregon. They're all legitimate lead stories, but there is so much of it any given day. And there's scandal and there's backroom deals and there's, people not telling the truth. And it's so overwhelming. And we threw Richard Nixon out of office? Really? For what? For saying he didn't know about a break-in? Or what? Really? Compared to what we see today? Annie, I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word.
Well, just that it's harder, I think, for people to pay attention because there's a variety of news sources, but they don't know which ones are telling the truth, which are, making things up. But, as citizens, we need to know what our government's doing and hold our representatives accountable, and that requires effort, I know, but that's what being a citizen is about.
Yeah, you got that right. Diane, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, Diane Katz, everybody, Senior Research Fellow in Regulatory Policy. It's 41 after on a free-for-all Friday. Got room for some of your phone calls after the break here if you got some thoughts about anything that's going on. It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Come on, everybody. We're gonna have a good time.
It is Friday, and, you just got to, sometimes you got to take a break. Seriously, sometimes you got to take a break going to, the world of make-believe. No, not politics. The movies. Yeah, come on, the movies. Yeah, the make-believe. I get that. Ron Van Timmeren, our next guest here from Celebration Cinemas. Ron, welcome to it, my friend.
Hey, Steve. Yeah, we can take you all the way to Mars this weekend if you'd like.
Well, that's kind of cool. How fortunate is it? I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. How fortunate is it that they come out with all these big announcements, actual announcements from NASA that they have found, salt water that flows on Mars, and then this movie comes out. I mean, that's pretty fortunate set of circumstances.
No such thing as bad publicity in the movie.
Amen, brother.
But you know what? This is, whether they found water on Mars or not, this is a terrific movie. Critics agree. I got a chance to see it. Well, first of all, and I know, Steve, you like a good survival story type movie, like Apollo 13,
Absolutely.
Gravity, Castaway. You like all those movies?
I do. Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah, well, this is a lot like that, a mashup of all of those sort of things. And then you got a great cast with Matt Damon leading the way, also Kristen Wiig, Jessica Chastain, Jeff Daniels, and others. You got a great director in Ridley Scott, who made one of my favorite movies of all time, Gladiator and Alien and Blade Runner and movies like that. And it's got a smart script based on a popular book, and it's even got comedy. So everything worked in The Martian. PG-13, 2D, 3D, D-Box. We got it all for you, man.
Yeah, Matt Damon has done a nice job. I was just sitting here thinking back to Good Will Hunting when he and Ben Affleck came out. Matt Damon seems to have had a better overall choice in the movies he has picked along the way that have made him, an A-lister, strong, permanent A-lister.
Yeah, both those guys. Remember Gone Girl last year and Argo with that Ben Affleck made won an Oscar. And you're right, two very talented guys. And I think I think Matt Damon is perfectly cast in The Martian. I think he's good for these kind of roles. Can't wait to see him in another Bourne movie. So this one's definitely going to be number one this weekend, tracking 50 million plus, I think.
Well, that'd be good. Now hold on there. Another Bourne movie? Tell me it isn't so.
It is so. He is back doing Bourne movies. That is coming out next year, or maybe the 17. I'm not even sure, but there will be another one with Matt Damon.
I like it. That's the way it should be. I appreciate that. All right, what else besides Matt Damon, The Martian? What else we got going on?
Well, for IMAX only, I loved this movie. It's called The Walk. It comes out on IMAX screens this week and then regular everywhere next week on the 9th. Robert Zemeckis covering that story about Philippe Petit, the guy who walked the wire between the Twin Towers back in 1974. Fascinating story. Robert Zemeckis, the director, showing us angles of this adventure that you just can't imagine. I mean, it's a hold on to your seat kind of thing once you're up on the wire with Philippe. And so I love The Walk. That's rated PG-13, again, IMAX only. And then good reviews for the movie Sicario. Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, Josh Brolin, action, drama set against the Mexican drug war versus the U.S. and getting solid reviews, 93% fresh for Sicario.
Yeah, that one looked really good in the previews to me. I thought that one just looked terrific.
Yeah, and you know what? It looks just like your basic action shoot-'em-up kind of story, but, boy, the critics are raving about it, how it was shot by the director of the movie The Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, and so there's a lot going for it that more than meets the eye.
Well, there you go. All right. Anything else we must catch this weekend at Celebration Cinemas?
Well, we got a limited release of a movie called Sleeping with Other People with Alison Brie and Jason Sudeikis. The Metropolitan Opera is back on theaters across America. The indie film series at Okemos, at Studio C, and in Muskegon and Grand Rapids. Lots to look up at celebrationcinema.com.
All right, Ron. Thank you so much, my friend.
See you at the movies.
There it is, Ron Van Timmeren, everybody. Celebration Cinemas that new at the box office for the weekend. That's Sicario to me. Looked like a strong film. The Martian, all right, if it's that good. No, if that's good, I'll go ahead and probably drop some money down on that. And, of course, the Bourne series. What's not to like, right? What's not to like with Jason Bourne? As long as Matt Damon doesn't open his mouth about politics, I'm good. I'm good to go. So, all right. This story, this is the story, kind of story that captures my attention and, just makes me think about what it was like back in time. An eastern Michigan farmer making a huge discovery in Lima Township. Partners at M Live reporting the bones of a woolly mammoth found by James Bristol in a soy field Monday of this week, Monday night in Washtenaw County's Lima Township. Bristol says he and a friend were digging when they found what they thought was a mud-covered and bent fence post. What it turned out to be was the tusk of a woolly mammoth. And it's been confirmed now by University of Michigan professor Dan Fisher, confirming that a woolly mammoth has been unearthed, or is being unearthed, I should say, in Lima Township there. He and others are working to dig out the skull and the huge tusk. And Fisher says there are only 10 similar sites in all of Michigan in recorded history where such a significant portion of a woolly mammoth skeleton has been found and then excavated. He says this one was probably a 40-year-old animal, and likely, he says, and I don't know how long it'll take him to determine such a thing or how long they're going to dig here, if they're going to find some stuff here, probably killed by humans. Did you say Frank's on the line? All right, let's go to Frank on the hotline this morning. Frank, welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning. I thought since it was Free for All Friday, I would just comment on the ads that you have on your program.
All right.
You have an MEA ad that comes on and says, ask your teachers and your educators what's best for your kids. And I can't help thinking how ironic it is that these are the people that have run our educational system for, I don't know, decades and decades and decades, and they've run it into the ground. And why would we ask them when they've left Michigan education in ruin?
Free for All Friday, 52 after on the Steve Gruber Show.